Hello and welcome to Pre-Sales Pathways, the podcast that is all about showcasing highly successful pre-sales professionals and the career paths that they've taken. My name is Chris Clark and I'm delighted today to be joined by Dan Iacono. Dan currently heads up all of technical enablement for the go-to-market teams at Augment Code. And prior to that, he's held senior IC and leadership positions at the likes of Glean, Snowflake, and HP. So over the next 30 minutes also, we're going to hear directly from Dan about how he got into pre-sales in the first place. He's going to give us an overview of what his technical enablement role involves today. And then last but not least, he's going to share some of the tips and tricks that he's learned over the years that have contributed to his career success. I actually had the privilege of working alongside Dan in our time at Glean, and he opened my eyes to what technical enablement can do and the impact that it can have. So for anyone that's considering that as part of their pre-sales career, this is definitely not an episode to miss. So that's enough from me. Dan, first of all, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. It'd be great to get a quick intro from your end.
It's good to be here. So Dan Iacono, I reside right in America outside of Philadelphia. Not known as the big, hotbed of, AI and technology development other than a local company, Comcast. So it's good to be here.
Fantastic. And we're comfortable with those sorts of areas, Dan. I'm in a remote part of Scotland, so even less AI going around here.
Yeah, most people know about Rocky and cheesesteaks when they think of Philadelphia.
Not generative AI. Well, going right to the beginning of your career, Dan, I'd love to hear about your first job.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of an interesting story. Actually, believe it or not, I'd like to tell people my degree is actually in TV and video production. So people say not computer science or any of the traditional routes. My career aspiration was originally to be on the American game show, The Price is Right. So I thought that was kind of a fun aspiration. I thought TV and video was kind of fun. And then the web, kind of happened. The explosion happened. So during college, I started building websites. At the end, I was building them for like $5,000 a pop. So I did the math really simply. I could do 4 websites a year and make just as much as an entry-level position at in TV and video. So I said, well, why am I going down this path when I've got this really cool technical, background? My dad was in, pre-sales and all these other things, but my brother is in, computer science PhD, teaches now at university. I said, I was never really interested because technical stuff back then was very not interesting. But then it became very interesting with the web, sold all of these different websites. And I said to my parents one day, I said, I think I'm going to go into technology. I think they were really happy because they were worried that I was going to live with them and be like a struggling, person. And then I was doing a bunch of interviews. And it was a really funny interview that I actually got for a pre-sales role in a startup company. And I had accepted another job offer. And I said, I just wanted to go to this interview and say, hey, look, not really interested, but I'm just talk. Literally after the interview, they called me back. We said, we really loved you. And we want you to come back for another view with the VP. VP took me, I only reason I took that interview because I wanted a free car ride home from university. He says, really love you, want to make you a large offer. It was twice what I would have made in TV and video. And that's how, I got started for a startup company and in pre-sales. So it was kind of an interesting journey. Everything that I've learned has been self-taught or going through various classes, but didn't have any university classes to get here.
Amazing. So from TV production to web design to pre-sales, and the first person on the podcast that comes from a dynasty of pre-sales professionals as well. So,
yeah, I mean, I grew up with computing. My father worked for a company called Univac, Sperry, which is now Unisys. So the grandfathers of computing always had things around, built computers, floppy disks when we had these things, all that kind of stuff. Just never thought I was going to have a career out of it. And then saw, really, I think the most fun thing, and kind of like the parallels now, is the web. You could actually make something fun fairly quickly versus my brother If you remember, there's an old programming language called Turbo Pascal. He spent weeks to make a Tetris game. Now, in the web, you can make that a lot faster. Now, in, I don't know, 30 seconds, one of the AI programs could make Tetris. So you kind of see this building, that you can do. And I think that's what made the web fun. And that's what I love with pre-sales as well. It was a fun thing, and helping people.
Awesome. So we covered right at the beginning of your career. I mean, let's fast forward to where we are today. You're heading up technical enablement for Augment Code. For people that haven't come across that, as I said, I was sort of new to it when I first joined Glean. Yeah, how would you describe technical enablement to people that haven't come across the function before?
Yeah, so I think technical enablement is really kind of an interesting blend of roles. So first of all, there's always been this kind of sales enablement where it's a very specialized role to help the sales teams get better. And then somebody said, well, we're helping the sales teams get better. What about the technical teams as well? So you're starting to see this growth of a technical enablement role. Now, traditionally, technical enablement, people first think of it as just training. And it's not training. Probably some of the breakthroughs that we had at Snowflake was that you can't out-train the people. Look, sales engineers, SEs, SAs, they're busy people. Training only gets you some of the way. You've ever taken training, you kind of go through training, then you forget it. What's really about enablement is solving problems for go-to-market organizations so they can move faster, and can they apply that actually in the field? And if it doesn't matter really about the training classes, it's about how do you get those results in the field. And so if you take that approach to it, it's a much bigger and more interesting role than just building training.
Yeah, makes sense. So more holistic, I guess, breaking it down into specific activities. Like, and appreciate you're a startup or a scale up, so every day probably looks quite different. But like, what would be some of the typical activities that you'd be involved in on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I like to take it from the problem approach. So I follow a methodology called action mapping, where you think about there's a go-to-market problem that needs to be solved, and then you start asking the questions like, well, why aren't they doing that today? So when you and I were working together, one of the biggest problems was that the company was moving really fast and releasing products. What was it? Tuesdays and Thursdays, new things were dropping. They were releasing it. There's nothing worse for an SE to have your customer say, well, what about this? And it just released and you didn't know about it. So let's take that. So that's where we started talking about having that weekly product meeting that you could go to, that was in a very interesting and distilled way. That happened to be a webinar, was the result on how people wanted to consume it. But the idea is for you as an SE was like, I know I can get this, so I don't have to research it myself. So rather than every SE trying to do their own research, which you still did anyway, but you knew you could get other things, it really solved a problem that was out in the field. So that's what I look at as my typical day, is trying to find all the problems that are being solved and trying to think of methods to solve it. Like right now, I'm working on how do I get all of the AEs to understand the software development lifecycle a little bit better. So we have some training, and then I also built an AI role play program so they can actually simulate doing, actually taking the training and doing it in front of a customer. And look, it's an AI, so if you screw up, no big deal, right? You didn't lose a deal because of it. You didn't lose revenue. So part of my role is doing go-to-market engineering, so building applications to actually help our field get better. And so I've built, obviously in the world of AI, I've built a lot of different applications to help the field. And I think that's part of the problem-solving process. It's not, hey, I want to build an application. There's a problem that needs to be solved to help the field go faster. And I think that's the fun part about my day is that solving problems, applying technology, and then also the mixed disciplinary background of understanding. I've done pre-sales, I've done post-sales, I've done partnerships, I've done all kinds of different roles within the organization. So bringing that holistic background to how the field needs to go and work is really, I think, what makes technical enablement fun for me.
Yeah.
And then seeing people like yourself grow, I think that's the most amazing part.
Yeah, and I think having done the role yourself makes such a big difference, right? You referenced the program that you ran at Glean. I even remember now, it was so valuable considering it was a reasonably short amount of time each session. It wasn't just the theory, it was this is how to apply it. Like, here's a demo that you can get running with immediately. These are some of the objections the customer might come up with. It was very applied. You could tell it was done by someone who had sort of been there, done that. And I think the audience will probably be surprised, right? You mentioned that it's far beyond just training, but the fact that you're so involved with tooling, that you're working on things like using generative AI to actually build coaches for individuals within the team.
Yeah, I think what's really kind of interesting about all of this is that everyone thinks about training. And I think the idea is that you have to look at holistic problem solving. So you have to get integrated with engineering and product management, because what happens if you don't get integrated with engineering and product management, they're going to release a feature or release something, and then you're going to have to scramble to figure that out. Versus if you're starting to work with them, they start to realize they're not great enablers. So you're actually offloading work for them. So they come to you and say, hey, we're going to release this new thing. Can you help us? And so that's when you know the flywheel is really working. And you have to have a technical background to do that. You have to understand, you have to empathize with their pain. And I think also part for you, Chris, and all the other SEs that are out there, I empathize with your pain as well. You're busy, you're handling multiple AEs, you have all these things that you're juggling. And I'm thinking about when I was an SE, what would I want? How would I digest it? What are the problems that customers are going to come to me? Like one of the favorite parts in that kind of enablement session was always like, what doesn't work in the feature? So you don't look like an idiot in front of your customers. And so marketing has a tendency to always talk about, okay, here's the new shiny thing that we want to put on LinkedIn. But in reality, for you as being the trusted advisor, you have to know the things that don't work, because you don't want to get caught in that meeting saying something or demoing something that you look bad, and then you lose that trusted advisor status.
Yeah, and particularly, as you mentioned, an environment when features are being released so quickly as the SE, you've got really limited bandwidth to keep up. So making sure that you give them all the information they might need, including here's traps not to fall into, is super, super helpful.
Well, there's always this tension within organizations of engineering wants to ship code. And then the idea is that when they ship code that day, they're like, well, how come you didn't sell it? And so you have to have this you have to have a realistic conversation and saying, if you want to, let's just say the date for SCO was today, or like a big feature launch, like a big event that you're going to look. And I said, you have two choices. If you want to code up until the event today and have nothing to show the field, and so that you're literally pushing the code until launch happens, guess what? Your field is not going to be ready to sell when their customers start pinging them on Slack or email or texting or whatever. Your field's not going to be ready, and it's going to be a bad experience for your customers. Or you can say stop ship is on, let's say, Monday, and we're going to get things ready for the field, and so that they'll be ready for Friday. Both things are actually okay. And this is part of like where, being in technical enablement, you have to have these conversations be comfortable to have this with your leadership and say, you have to pick a direction. It's okay if you want to do code up until the time, but just understanding there's going to be some mixed customer things at the end. Yep. Or if you want to be very much prepared for your customers, you have to stop ship. And engineering doesn't understand usually that you as an SE are not waiting there for them to drop code. You're dealing with a lot of other things, and code happens to drop.
Yeah, which is a nice segue into you mentioned already one of the aspects that you really like about the role, that you get to support SEs, see them grow. One of the aspects, talk to me about an aspect of the role that you don't like so much.
Yeah, I think for me, so one of the things that I like about the technical enablement role, and kind of contrast what I don't like about it, is that I started having a family, so I really liked, in technical enablement, the hours were a bit more predictable because I didn't have customers and AEs demands that kind of happened. The thing that I never liked, because my engineering background is last minute asked, like, oh my God, we're going to make a pricing change tomorrow. Can you build an enablement for this? And it's 4 o'clock, you've got, kids activities and all these other things. That happens occasionally, within the enablement role, but there are less, emergencies, last minute things. You can go on vacation for a week or two and not have to, there's no emergencies that, nobody calls you on vacations that we have this big enablement thing. Usually things are going on. So the last minute things are really kind of my pet peeves, because I really like doing quality work. And if you do an emergency, generally you can get something good out, but it's not going to be what's needed. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much everyone's pet peeve. I mean, nobody likes, I'm sure any SEs that are listening, nobody likes when the AE drops a demo on your calendar, 30 minutes before it's supposed to happen that you have, and with no discovery information. It's that kind of things that are difficult.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, I guess then part of the role is actually managing stakeholders and making sure that they understand there's an amount of buffer time that needs to exist if they want quality enablement ahead of time.
Yeah, I think what happens, and I think this is, I'm still learning this at Augment. We did this a lot at Glean and in Snowflake, is that you really have to work with the stakeholders like the engineering teams and the go-to-market teams. That if you get lead time, you can offload the work from them, and they're like, oh, and then the field uptakes my feature or my product or whatever it is. And so that once they start realizing that, they come to you. And I think that's a great feeling that you're producing something of quality to the other organizations, and you get the kudos from your fellow technical people. Like, really, that saved me. Like, hey, I had a demo today and I didn't have to think about that because I used the enablement to do that demo.
Yeah, awesome. So
and as you know, sometimes demo environments didn't even exist. So I would always ask product managers, is there a demo environment for this? And they're like, no, we have it in the dev pod over here. I say, so how would an SE actually show this? I know you're chuckling, but this is a funny part about solving a problem. It's not just, the result may be an enablement, but there's a lot of problems that need to be solved. And they're like, oh, we should really move this to somewhere. Like, yes, if you want your feature or your thing to get any uptake, we need to show it to customers. Oh, yeah. Right? And so that's part of the problem solving out there. And there's usually sometimes to go from code to demoable thing, there's a lot of things that you need to unpack to get there.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, a lot more cross-functional than people would necessarily expect. So we covered sort of how you got into pre-sales. We covered your role in technical enablement today. I guess looking back over the whole arc of your career, where you've had incredible success, what are 2 to 3 habits that maybe you would attribute that success to?
I think there's a couple things that I was thinking about. This is a really good question. I think the first thing that I've always gravitated towards are the things that people know that need to get done, but nobody wants to do. So usually they're tough things. Like right now I'm working on benchmarking. Everyone says we should have this kind of benchmarking. I just said, let me go figure it out, and created a benchmark. And so everyone, like when we were at Glean, everyone said we should have a weekly product enablement. We should have an onboarding program. Okay, let's just go figure it out. I've always gravitated towards that. And then the second part is, like, I'm turning 48 in another few days. I'm learning every day. I think the problem is that people get into their career and they say, I've gotten senior enough, I don't have to learn. And so whether it's taking courses, whether it's reading blog posts, whether it's trying out new things. I mean, SEs themselves are always curious people, but I think you always have to be learning and understanding and reading about where the industry is going and starting to learn. I think why I got into Glean and then into Augment Code especially is that I spent a lot of time working with AI. So before it was the thing. So I think that's the key thing that every SE has to do is don't get settled into a company. Say, I know this one product, I've got SE skills, and I know this one product. You have to know what's going on in the industry and keep learning.
Yeah. And to your point around there being a sort of link with, as people get more senior in the organization, I was actually writing recently about, I remember really vividly the first time I went through sales methodology training, and I came out, I said, that was amazing. And then I was talking to some of the AEs and I thought like, oh, didn't you really enjoy that? And the more senior AEs sort of brushed it aside of, oh yeah, I already know how to sell. Like there was nothing new for me there. Whereas the more junior AEs and the SDRs and the BDRs were like sponges, and they absorbed it and put it into action almost immediately. So it's quite telling how people just became less open to, some people became less open to learning more over time.
Well, I think the challenge with especially AEs in the AI kind of revolution that we're in right now is things are going to change, and you can't. There are relationship sellers out there, but they're going to have to demo their own product. They're going to have to use AI tools for leverage. You can't say I'm not technical, right? I think one of the frustrating things for me is when somebody says, "Well, I don't know this." You literally have, I think what's fun for enablement now is you have all these AI products, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, whatever your flavor is, you can ask anything. And first of all, it doesn't make fun of you. There's no dumb question. So you can ask the most simplest question, to it. And so I think people have to really start learning and using those tools, because people are using them around them, and they're going to get that kind of competitive advantage.
Yeah. Dan, I'd love to hear an example of a challenge that you've had in your career and what you took from that, what you learned from that challenge.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges actually coming into technical enablement. I was in running a couple groups within the field CTO within Snowflake. We're kind of high flying organization, and I was looking for a change myself. I'd always been a good person in front of customers, in front of people, teaching people. Didn't really know much about technical enablement until Eve started talking about it. And I actually went through at Snowflake. They had some coaching, and I went through 6 months of coaching, and I was really kind of struggling. I said, "There's this role out here to be head of technical enablement. It seems like there's this mental perception of going from field CTO to technical enablement and going down in my career, and then I could never go back. And it's like, what do I do?" And then I also looked at my age, and I was going through the coaching and talking with this person, and we kind of worked through it and said, like, I really enjoy teaching and being in front of people, seeing people grow. And that part of being a manager is one of the things I love, was bringing people up, getting to the careers that they needed to be. And then even surpassing people. I didn't care if people became my peer or even my manager. That was just great to see them grow. So working through coaching, it really said, you know what, I really want to go all in on this. And it was a struggle. I was talking to my wife, hey, we might not make as much money, these types of things. But then there was a part of happiness. And I said, look, I've got X amount of years left in my career. Let me go for what I think is best for me. And this actually worked out fantastically well. I mean, through the sponsorship of, Eve Besant, who was at Snowflake, now at Okta, she was really a big proponent. We built a stellar team there at Snowflake. And then when things kind of got stale there, then that's when I started looking towards Glean, and that's where you and I kind of hooked up.
Yeah, I love it. And rather than, it's easy to get fixated on a particular title and work back from that, but actually going to, what is it that you've done in the past that you enjoy, what motivates you, and really shaping or taking a role based on that.
Yeah, and like every day, it's always a fun challenge. And so, I mean, I've had offers. I almost went back to the field at Glean. I was like this close about going to work for the, I guess, commercial SE team. I was this close because there's a lot of coaching involved with that. For me, I've been in the enterprise and even strategic sales SE teams. I didn't like that for me personally as an SE manager, because the strategic SE teams, they really don't want you as part of their deal. They're like, look, I got it. I'm a senior principal. Just approve my expense reports and do all these other things. That's not fun to me. Like, yes, there was more money, but when I was dealing with the commercial teams, I loved it because they were like, let me help you with your demo. Let me help you do all these things. I felt like I could lift up the team as a manager versus just being an orchestrator.
Yeah, makes sense. And Dan, I'd love to hear a highlight from the career.
I think the highlight is really just building some fantastic teams. I mean, for me, there is, early in my career in Glasshouse, we built I was in the storage practice. We had a fantastic team together that we just kind of anticipated everything. For the European audits, I love F1, where they kind of, you're changing wheels in like 4 seconds. It's just fantastic. And the only way that I've always used that analogy, when everyone knows what their role is and they can respond to each other, that's a great feeling. I had the same feeling like that when I was at Commvault. We built a team. Same thing at Snowflake when we did technical enablement. We really just understood everything. We had 6 weeks to do an event with 900 SCs, and they were all new to the role. We all just really worked with each other and melded and did something really fantastic. And then even coming at Glean, just everyone working together. I mean, this is my highlight, is really working as teams and just seeing a massive impact.
Yeah, I love it. And I think everyone can look back to one or more teams they've had in their career, which is it's such a contributing factor to the satisfaction of the job. I guess to close us out, I'd love to hear a piece of advice that you would have for someone, or perhaps yourself earlier in your career, or someone else who's starting their pre-sales career. What would you advise them?
I think one of the things when I was younger, and I think every young person thinks this, and I thought this, and now as I have a gray beard and a lot less hair, they think I know everything. And I think one of the things, if I was let's say a new SE, or maybe even somebody in post sales that's looking to get into a pre-sales role younger, because folks usually start in post sales doing implementation type work, and then they move their way into pre-sales. See if you can partner up with a senior at SE and start learning those types of skills, because it's not all technology. There's a lot of interpersonal skills, and really understanding some of the wisdom on how to work with some of the folks that are a little bit more senior. They may not move as fast, but you'll find they're moving a lot more deliberately. You'll learn a lot of you can learn a lot from people that are a little bit older and been around a little bit, and you can kind of blend those two things together, and I think it can help you along your career a lot faster.
Yeah, great. What's next for you, Dan?
So I think for me, some people say they're in the back 9 of the career. I'm in the back 3 or 4. For me, for me, it's always, I'm going to stay in enablement. I don't think I'm going to go back into sales engineering unless somebody said, look, I need you to do this. It was a good friend. I would love to help them. I love what I'm doing. I love what I'm building. I think the role for me is also slanting from just technical enablement also into go-to-market engineering. So it's also building all the plumbing and the systems that to make go-to-market go faster. So that's kind of, maybe I'm evolving the role, or the role's evolving with me. And I'm really enjoying kind of building. As I just posted on LinkedIn, I teach Lego robotics. So as I my career is starting to end in the corporate life, I'm going to be devoting more time to helping, inspire the next generation of engineers that are out there.
Incredible. Great. Well, Dan, I've learned so much from this reasonably short conversation. As I mentioned, you opened my eyes already at Glean to the impact that technical enablement can have. But for me, such a big takeaway, and your point there towards the end of shifting towards sort of go-to-market engineering, it's so much more than training, right? It's so much more holistic than that. It's looking at all the different problems that go-to-market have, starting with those problems and how to work back from there. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. I know the audience are going to really love this episode. I'm sure you don't mind if people are interested in following along. They'll be able to follow you or connect with you on LinkedIn. And
absolutely,
that brings us to the end of this episode. Next episode is going to be same format. I'll be talking to another inspirational professional. So thanks for listening or for watching.